My name is Margaret Hayes, a 72-year-old widow who used to make a living by sewing. My life has passed quietly in Maple Grove, Ohio, a small, cozy house, the smell of wood smoke lingering in the air, and dry maple leaves falling all over the walkway like silent memories clinging to time. I lost my husband at the age of 38 when Thomas, the only partner I loved, died of heart disease. Since then, I have lived alone, carrying the loneliness not only of loss, but also of being gradually pushed aside by my son and his family. However, I still keep a strong heart, still cling to a fragile hope that one day the cracks in our relationship can be healed. The gentle wind blows through the window, gently shaking the old, worn floral curtains, reminding me of past autumns, distant memories that I once tried to bury deep in my heart. That afternoon, the chilly air of late autumn covered the town with a thin layer of sadness, seeping into every corner of my memory. I was sewing a small tear in an old sleeve by the window, my gaze drifting aimlessly through the dusty glass, watching the yard bright yellow with withered leaves. Then the familiar clacking sound from the mailbox in front of the house startled me out of my memory. A letter. I stood up, my hands shaking slightly as I opened the rusty mailbox. How long had it been since I had received a handwritten letter, especially from Laura, my daughter-in-law, who had almost never used a pen and paper since her wedding to Daniel. For more than 20 years, all communication had been limited to a few short phone calls or dry text messages. A vague premonition, half apprehensive, half eager, crept into my heart. The handwriting in the letter was neat and tidy, but it exuded a sense of hardness and distance. Dear Mrs. Margaret Hayes. The first line made me pause. My eyebrows furrowed slightly. So strange. The content was an invitation to Emma's 17th birthday party, my niece. The letter was short, without any greetings, without any warmth, more like a notice than a family invitation. My heart sank. Did Daniel really want to reconnect the loose bond between us? Or was it just a social obligation that Laura forced upon me for the sake of formality? Daniel was now a successful architect, while Laura, ambitious, cold, had always lived in a world completely separate from my simple lifestyle. I often wondered if Daniel still had any feelings left for the mother who raised him alone. I stood still on the doorstep, clutching the letter as if it might provide an answer, my eyes following the cold lines. Should I go? Part of me wanted to refuse the indifferent looks, the stories that had nothing to do with me. But the other part, the part that always yearned to be loved, the part that had never given up hope, spoke up strongly. I would go. I wanted to give them a chance, and also for myself to believe once again that the family could heal. I went back into the house and opened the old wardrobe, where I kept my fabrics and my memories. My hands passed through the layers of floral fabrics and worn sweaters, and then stopped at the hand-embroidered ivory silk scarf. It was a gift I had spent many nights sewing meticulously for my mother on her 80th birthday, a token of love. I decided to give it to Emma, not a luxury or trendy item, but a crystallization of affection, of the simplest and most profound things I could give. I wondered, among the expensive and flashy gifts that Daniel and Laura were accustomed to, would this scarf be appreciated? Or would it be forgotten, like my presents over the years? That question lingered in my mind, like a vague premonition of what was to come. Would I find the warmth of family love at that party? Or was it just a fresh cut, causing old wounds to bleed even more, forcing me to face a long-hidden truth about motherhood? I had no answer. I only knew that I had to go. I had to try. Just once. My small sewing room has long been a sanctuary for my soul, a separate world where I find peace amidst the hustle and bustle of life. The dim yellow light from the old table lamp casts shadows on the colorful rolls of fabric, mixed with the lingering scent of beeswax from the antique sewing machine, a relic from my youth, still working silently like the rhythm of my life. The ticking of the clock echoes regularly, reminding me that time is still passing, even though everything in this room seems to stand still. This is my world, quiet, enduring, familiar. After reading Laura's letter, I returned to that room, as if looking for a place to wash away the confusion that was rising in my heart. I chose a green sweater, simple, unpretentious, but each thread of wool, each stitch carried the warmth of my hand, something I still wore every winter to comfort myself. Then I carefully placed the hand-embroidered silk scarf on a piece of soft tissue paper, folded each corner neatly, and tied it with a cream-colored ribbon. Each stitch on it was a slice of memory, a part of me silently sent into each thread. That gift was not just an object, but a gentle whisper from the past, a love warmed over the years. While wrapping the gift, my hand accidentally flipped through the old notebook, where the sweet fragments of memories were kept. The scraps of paper Daniel had written appeared, scribbles, clumsy but loving childish drawings. Like a broken dike, memories rushed back fiercely, carrying me back to the cold days after Thomas's sudden death. At that time, Daniel was only 10 years old. His eyes were wide open, full of confusion and fear, as I held him in my arms, trying to hold back my sobs so as not to scare him more. I struggled to continue living, working endlessly on the sewing machine, staying up many nights, just hoping that my son would have enough to eat, enough to wear, enough to be strong enough to step into life. My own dreams quietly fell away, giving way to silent sacrifices because I believed my son deserved a better future. But then, those sweet memories were quickly replaced by the dull pain of separation. Daniel gradually became a successful man, but also increasingly distant. From the boy who always clung to me, he was now a busy man, often canceling the dinners that mother and son once considered sacred, citing work or meeting schedules. I still clearly remember the time I brought a jar of homemade raspberry jam to his house, the dish he always asked for every Sunday morning when he was a child. Laura, my daughter-in-law, just glanced at it, then smiled faintly. Oh my gosh, who still eats these outdated things nowadays? A seemingly light sentence, but it cut into my heart like a knife. Not only the jam, but my whole world, full of love and simplicity, was denied with just a shake of the head. The pain was still there, quiet, smoldering, until I turned to the last page of the notebook. An old drawing fell out, yellowed by time. Daniel had drawn me and him standing in front of a small house with the words scrawled in pencil, "Mom is my hero." My heart clenched, not with sadness, but with a mixture of emotion and pity. That drawing was a testament to a pure love that had existed, a piece of evidence of the difficult but loving years we had overcome together. It was like a faint light shining through the fog of doubt, making me believe that, perhaps, deep inside Daniel still held the image of the boy from back then, the one who once considered his mother the world. I knew that the distance between Daniel and I had been there for a long time, perhaps since he had come into the world, or since Laura had appeared, pulling him away from my arms, leading him into a world where everything was polished, proper, but cold. But this drawing was like an echo from memory, whispering, "Love is not gone. It is just sleeping somewhere." So I was even more determined to go to the party. I wanted to see Emma, to put in her hands the gift I had cherished with all my affection. And most of all, I wanted to find again, even if it was just a glimmer, the love that had faded over time. In my heart, a silent war is taking place. On one side is the deep love, despite the pain, of a mother who sacrificed her whole life for her son. On the other side is the resentment, being excluded from her son's life, being despised by her own blood relatives. But regardless of all, I will still go. I will not carry any resentment, will not ask for anything, only carry the love of a mother and entrust it to one last chance, hoping that it will be accepted by someone. From a distance, Daniel's house appeared like an oasis of light in the quiet night of suburban Maple Grove, a modern, sharp, and cold structure surrounded by a flat stone courtyard and LED strips that illuminated each step with a perfect, emotionless light. The melodious sound of a violin emanated from the speakers hidden in the ceiling, mixed with loud laughter, the clinking of wine glasses, all of it forming a lavish, stifling symphony in the air, filled with the smell of success and distance. I stood still in front of the large gate, taking a deep breath, feeling as if I was about to step across an invisible boundary into another world, a splendid but unfamiliar place, a place where I had never had a place. I walked into the party carrying a simple bag, holding my carefully wrapped gift. A forced smile appeared on my lips. I tried to blend in with the strange guests, people wearing expensive designer clothes, holding glasses of sparkling wine, talking excitedly about million-dollar projects, vacations in Switzerland, or unique fashion collections. I suddenly felt lost, like a wrong note in a flashy harmony. My eyes darted around, searching for a familiar look, a warm face, but all was hopeless. Everyone was busy in their own world, and I was just a faint shadow lost in their midst. Daniel appeared. It was Daniel, but not the Daniel I knew. He was elegant, neat, confident, but his eyes when he saw me suddenly lit up with surprise, almost unhappiness. "Mom," he said softly, his voice mixed with a bit of embarrassment, as if my presence was unexpected, even annoying. He quickly pulled me to the corner of the house, away from the eyes of the people who were talking. "Mom is here? I thought you wouldn't come." That seemingly innocuous sentence was like a sharp cut into my heart. I thought he would be happy, would run to hug me like before. "Mom was invited? Shouldn't you come?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, even though my heart was starting to break. He leaned down, whispering close to my ear. "Mom, please be a little more discreet. My architectural partner is here too." His voice was low but clear, accompanied by a glance towards a group of middle-aged men who were laughing loudly. Those words were like a bucket of cold water thrown straight into my face, not only numbing me, but also extinguishing the last fragile ray of hope. I was not an honored guest. I was an inconvenience, a concern that he wanted to hide from the eyes of the world he lived in. Laura walked over, wearing a tight black dress, her hair tied up in a haughty bun, her face carefully made up like a cold mask. She just glanced at me with an indifferent gaze, then turned to the group of women beside her and introduced herself. "This is Daniel's mother." That was it. No name, no friendly gaze, no kind greeting. I suddenly felt invisible, like an object that someone brought along for formality, but no one really cared about. I was no longer Margaret Hayes, the one who had stayed up many nights at the sewing machine to raise Daniel, the one who had been his whole world. I was just Daniel's mother, a cold, empty title, bound in a shell of emotionless formality. A feeling of grievance welled up in my chest, as if my entire being had been excluded from my own son's life. I took a deep breath, trying to hold on to my last bit of patience, and looked for Emma, my niece, the little hope in this strange place. I just wanted to see her, to hand over the gift I had poured so much effort into. I just wanted to see Emma's smile, something that could bring a little warmth to this cold house. But the more I walked, the more I felt like I was wading through a thick fog of indifference and distance. The house was large and splendid, but to me it was like a lonely maze, each step echoing with an unquenchable feeling of superfluity. The desire to be recognized as a part of this family was stifled little by little as the harsh reality kept hitting me, with eyes, with words, with deliberate indifference. I don't know how much longer I can endure. On one side is the endless love of a mother who has sacrificed her whole life to raise her child. On the other side is the feeling of being ignored, pushed out of every corner of her child's life. But I still stand there, still holding tightly onto the gift bag. I haven't given up, not because I'm delusional, but because I still believe that love, even if it's silent and lonely, still deserves to be given one last time. I quietly chose a hidden corner in the large living room, where a pot of lush green plants stretched out amidst the splendor, as if trying to bring a bit of natural vitality into that strange space. The pale yellow light from the crystal chandelier fell gently, but was not enough to dispel the feeling of loneliness creeping into my heart. The banquet table was elaborately arranged with pure white linen tablecloths, vanilla-scented candles that lightly emitted a sweet scent, and sparkling champagne glasses that reflected the light like fragments of a luxurious world that I could not enter. The laughter of the guests resounded loudly like a chorus of sounds and colors, but to me, it was just a series of chaotic, strange sounds, resounding in a world that was not meant for me. I sat there, leaning back in my chair, trying to keep my composure, trying to blend into the bustling atmosphere around me. The well-dressed guests moved as if they were floating in a cloud of expensive perfume. They talked about Daniel's latest architectural projects, expensive vacations on the Amalfi Coast, and haute couture collections for the few. They used code words, the language of a class I had never touched. I tried to listen, trying to find a space in the flowery words to insert a sentence, a small presence, just so I wouldn't feel completely invisible. I smiled warily at a woman standing nearby who was excitedly describing a skiing trip in the Alps. "Did you have a good time?" I asked softly, almost timidly. She glanced at me, nodded, and continued her conversation, as if I were a thin layer of air that was of little importance. I tried my luck again with a man standing near the banquet table, asking about modern architecture, a topic that I thought was at least somewhat relevant to Daniel's work. "Architecture changes so quickly, doesn't it?" I said. He shrugged, took a sip of champagne, and turned away without answering. The blank stares, the lifeless answers made me realize I didn't belong here. I was a stray sound, a stranger in my own child's life. My eyes searched for Emma. She was laughing and talking happily with her friends, her long hair shining under the lamplight. I stood up and walked towards her. "Emma, my dear," I called. She turned around, her sparkling eyes barely glancing at me. "Hello," she said softly, almost whispering for the sake of it, then quickly turned away, lost in conversation with her friends. No hug, no greeting, not even a loving glance. My heart sank. Even Emma, the niece I had always believed to be closest to, was drifting away from me like a sail from the shore of memory. Laura was busy entertaining guests, a glass of red wine in her hand, the perfect prop for her role as the model hostess. She smiled at everyone but me. Every time she passed me, her eyes swept over me as if I were an invisible wall, an inconsequential piece of furniture. There was something cold about Laura, a coldness that was unspoken, but enough to make my very cells freeze. I sat back in my chair, trying to keep quiet. A middle-aged man, neatly dressed, leaned over to the person next to him, whispering but not low enough for me to not hear. "Look at her. Her clothes don't match the atmosphere of the party. She must be a distant relative." Each word fell like sharp shards of glass, stabbing straight into my self-esteem. I looked down at the green sweater, knitted by hand with all the meticulousness and love. It used to be my pride, but now, under that judgmental gaze, it only made me feel backward, rustic, and pitiful. Margaret began to question her decision to attend the party. I had expected too much, to open my arms to receive some warmth from my family, but all I received was indifference, coldness in my eyes and words. However, amidst the mounting disappointment, a fragile ray of hope still existed. Maybe I could still have a peaceful moment with Emma, a word of greeting, a handshake. In my heart, a silent struggle is taking place. On one side is the belief in sacred feelings, family love, mother child love, grandmother grandchild love, that I always keep like a small flame. On the other side is the harsh reality, the contemptuous looks, the cold words from my own son and daughter in law. Should I try to hold on to the last bit of hope, or should I return to my familiar little house, where I can be myself without being judged, without having to wait wearily for recognition? The answer is still vague, like the sparkling but cold lights at the party tonight. I nestled in a quiet corner by the floor-to-ceiling glass window, where the sparkling light from the garden outside shone in, reflecting on my face the intertwined light and dark streaks that resembled the wavering moods in my heart. Amidst this splendid and bustling space, I was like a quiet ink mark lost in the midst of a flashy painting, the clinking of glasses, the shrill laughter that echoed throughout the space, all blended together into a chaotic, harsh sound, as if mocking my lonely presence. I slightly withdrew, feeling like I was shrinking in a sparkling but strange world, where I had no support to cling to. I saw Laura walking past, a glass of sparkling champagne in her hand, laughing and talking with a group of well-dressed and stylish women. I decided to try again, even though I knew the result would hurt me. "Laura," I called softly, my voice trembling as if afraid it would break in the grandeur. She turned, her eyes sweeping over me as if I were a stranger in a crowd. "What's the matter, Mother?" Her voice was even, polite to the point of coldness. "I just wanted to ask about Emma," I replied, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "How is she? Are you okay?" Laura smiled crookedly, her lips curling up but her eyes remained cold. "Emma is still the same, busy with her studies, maybe even busier than Daniel. Why do you ask? You never see her. Why do you care?" Each word she uttered was like a dagger, not hiding the sarcasm, as if to pierce deeper into the growing distance between me and my niece, a distance that they themselves had built. I swallowed, trying to ignore the harsh words. I just I just wanted to know you were okay. I hand-embroidered a silk scarf, and I was going to give it to you for your birthday," I whispered, gently gesturing to the bag beside me, where the small gift was kept. Laura suddenly burst out laughing, her laughter like the sound of broken crystal, so cold it pierced the heart. A few nearby guests turned to look, their eyes filled with curiosity. "Hand-embroidered silk scarves? My God, you still make those old-fashioned things? Who uses those old-fashioned things anymore? Emma has a whole wardrobe of expensive designer clothes. If she saw your scarf, she would laugh," she said, her voice full of mockery and contempt. "Nowadays, people like designer, high-tech stuff, not those old-fashioned handmade things, Mom." She turned to the women beside her, winking mischievously, making them giggle as if they were watching a comedy. My face felt as if it had been doused with boiling water. The room was spinning, as if everyone was staring at me, not because of my presence, but because I had become a laughing stock. The sweater I had knitted felt out of place, out of place. The silk scarf in my pocket felt like it was on fire, not because of my feelings, but because of the shame that was exploding. I wanted to get up and walk out of this place right away, but my legs were tied. I still clung to the idea that I needed to save face for Daniel, for Emma, even though in their hearts, I probably didn't exist anymore. Just then, Laura suddenly called out, "Emma, come here, I have something for you." Emma was standing across the room, chatting happily with a boy. She ran over, her eyes shining. Laura carefully smoothed her hair, then pulled out a dark blue velvet box from her bag. Happy birthday, my dear. Here's a special gift for you. This gold bracelet is a legacy from your mother's family, passed down through many generations. Wear it to always remember that you are part of this prestigious family. Emma exclaimed happily, her eyes sparkling as she put the bracelet on her wrist. She hugged Laura tightly, her mouth full of thanks, completely oblivious to my presence, the grandmother who had quietly come to celebrate her birthday. Laura smiled contentedly, then quietly looked at me, her eyes silently saying, "See, this is class. As for yours, no one would even pick it up if you threw it away." My heart felt like it was being squeezed. The small gift I had brought with me, the silk scarf embroidered with love, with sleepless nights, was now being pushed aside as a meaningless object. I felt like a shadow that no one needed to remember, existing only to serve as a backdrop for those dazzling lights. Laura didn't just want to hurt me. She wanted me to feel humiliated, to understand that I didn't belong here and that all the values I held dear had been crushed by the times. Despite my heartache, I gritted my teeth and kept quiet. I didn't want to make a scene, didn't want to embarrass Emma on her birthday. I just wanted this party to end soon so I could leave without falling apart. My patience was being eroded bit by Laura's cold, open contempt. I could only brace myself, trying to survive every minute. The atmosphere in the house gradually closed in around me like a transparent trap, soft but with no way out, making me feel like a lost soul in the middle of my own son's party. I tried to avoid Laura, walking to find a corner where I could breathe properly. The hallway ahead stretched out in the dim light from the chandelier, the pale yellow light falling on the mirror-like wooden floor, reflecting my distorted, unsteady silhouette. The music from the living room still echoed, but now it sounded strange like a blurred memory, both familiar and cold. I just wanted to run away, but the pain and anger churning inside me kept pushing me towards confrontation. I paused, clutching my handbag, where the silk scarf I had brought, the gift I had yet to give, was. I could no longer keep silent and swallow my sobs. I had tried to belong here, to reach out my arms in love, but in return I was met with cold eyes and contemptuous voices. I turned and walked quickly toward the living room, looking for Laura. She was standing next to Daniel, smiling brightly at a couple I didn't recognize. I stepped forward, my chest heaving, my voice coming out clearer than I thought it would. "Laura, I want to talk to you now." Laura turned back, her eyes narrowing in annoyance. "What is it, Mom? I'm busy entertaining guests." "I want to know why you treated me like this." I couldn't hold it in any longer, my voice trembling from holding it in for so long. "You humiliated me in front of everyone, mocked the gift I chose. I'm Daniel's mother. I deserve to be treated well." Laura sneered, her eyes as sharp as razors. "Insult? I'm just stating the truth. You should take a good look at yourself. With that rustic look and that old-fashioned embroidered scarf, do you think you can fit into our world?" Her voice rose, full of defiance. "You should know your place. Who are you to make a fuss here?" Daniel, who had been silent until now, suddenly interrupted. "Mom, what are you doing? Are you trying to cause trouble in the middle of my party?" He stepped forward, standing between me and Laura, his face tense, his eyes filled with anger and frustration. "You're making a mess of things. I'm meeting with a business partner. Can't you just leave me alone?" "Daniel," I said, my heart aching at the sight of my son's face, which suddenly felt painfully unfamiliar. "Did you hear what Laura just said? She was insulting me. Are you going to stand by and watch as if nothing happened?" "You're making a big deal out of this," Daniel snapped, his voice harsh. "Laura was just joking. You're always making a big deal out of it. You're making things difficult for everyone. Please calm down." His gaze on me was both pleading and distant, as if I were a burden he was trying to lift. A joke? I burst out, my voice almost breaking with sobs. Do you think I don't know what a joke is? What an insult is? I'm being humiliated in front of your guest, and you defend her? Are you really on her side? Daniel sighed, rubbing his forehead as if exhausted by my presence. Mom, I beg you, I don't want any trouble here. You don't belong in this world, you understand? You and your old-fashioned things just make everything feel out of place. Please go home. Those words were like a knife cutting straight into my heart. Mom doesn't belong to our world. The sentence didn't need to be pronounced, but it was enough to make my heart freeze. The son I once held and protected now pushed me out of his life like an outdated, worthless object. I felt as if my chest was being squeezed, like a block of ice was slowly taking over the heart that once burned with love. I looked into Daniel's eyes, desperately searching for something familiar. A hint of tenderness, a wrinkle of love that had once been there. But there was nothing. There was only a cold, distant gaze, as if I had never been his mother. I understood that Daniel no longer considered me family. He had built a world of his own, and I, the one who had sacrificed everything, was now just a blur, not worth mentioning. In that throes, on the border between motherhood and despair, something flashes, fragile but proud. Perhaps there is nothing left of me here, but I still have myself. I will walk, not because I am pushed away, but because I refuse to be trampled on anymore. The moment I faced Daniel, the person I once cherished more than myself, now looked at me with eyes that no longer had any love. His eyes looked at me with a terrifying strangeness, and the words he had just uttered still echoed like a cold knife. Mom, you don't belong to our world. Go home. Every fragile hope of reconciliation, every desire to reach out and hug my child was shattered, as light as soap bubbles bursting in the wind. A dull pain, a deep humiliation, and a bit of anger that had been suppressed for too long suddenly erupted, burning away all the remaining emotions in me. I turned, my eyes meeting Daniel and Laura's. Two cold, arrogant faces, looking as if my presence were a blemish they wanted to wipe from their perfect lives. They both stood there, their discomfort evident, as if I had broken the protocol of an alien world to which I had not been invited. There was a silence, broken only by the distant music from the living room, and my heart pounded in my chest. In the midst of the agony, an unusual power rose within me, raw, fierce, and unyielding. I knew I was at my limit. I took a deep breath, pouring all my bitterness into a single sentence. My voice, though soft, rang out sharply, like a slash tearing through the silence that was covering. You have rejected me. But remember, your arrogance will one day pay the price. Each word I uttered was like an arrow piercing the tense, suffocating atmosphere. Laura was startled. The smug look on her face disappeared in an instant, replaced by an undisguised shock. Daniel was stunned, his eyes staring as if he did not recognize the mother standing before him. Perhaps he never thought I would dare to speak those words. It was not a curse, but a truth, a declaration from someone who had endured too long. I had said it all, pouring out all the bitterness, the silent sacrifices that had never been acknowledged for so many years. It was the final explosion from a heart that had been torn apart by wounds. I didn't wait for anything more, no reaction, no holding back. I turned and walked away, without looking back. Each step I took was more determined than ever, even though my heart was still breaking into pieces. I clutched my handbag, where the small silk scarf, the gift I hadn't given yet, still lay there silently as a silent symbol of rejected love. Each step I took away from that house was like cutting off the invisible strings that had tied me for so long to a family that was no longer mine. The night wind blew by, cold and thorny, tossing my hair across my cheeks. The smell of dry leaves, the taste of night dew, and the still sky seemed to embrace me. But strangely, I did not feel cold. Instead, there was a strange feeling of relief, as if a large stone had just fallen from my chest after years of being heavy. Tears fell silently, but they were not tears of weakness, but tears of awakening. I cried for the broken things, for the forgotten feelings, and for myself, who had just found the way to free myself. My words were not a whim. They were a milestone, a line that marked irreversible change. All my life I had lived for others, for Thomas, for Daniel, gathering bits of love to keep my family together. But from this moment on, I would live for myself. I would not waste another minute trying to hold on to rotten relationships. No more forced smiles. No more trying to please people who only knew how to despise my presence. I walked on into the quiet night of Maple Grove, my heart still bleeding, but no longer trembling. The road ahead might be full of pits and steep slopes, but at least it was mine. A road where I could be myself, live up to my values, and be loved by the woman I had forgotten for so long, myself. This was the beginning, not of an escape, but of a journey of rebirth that I was finally ready to embrace. The next morning, the morning sunlight crept through the thin curtains in the living room window, spreading soft yellow light on the wooden table, illuminating a few old books lying quietly like old friends. The small space around me suddenly became peaceful and familiar. The scent of mint tea wafted through the air, gently soothing the scars on my soul after a stormy night. Last night, I returned home feeling devastated, exhausted, and broken. Yet now something very strange was gradually seeping into every breath, a feeling of serenity and relief. I sat down on my familiar chair, quietly watching the rays of sunlight dance on the floor, and felt freedom gradually opening up. My eyes wandered around the small room, where many memories of Daniel were kept. His childhood photos, his old toys now covered in dust, all of them evoked a part of the memory that I had tried to hold on to tightly. But it was this moment that made me understand. Holding on to the past does not make the pain go away. It only makes it deeper. I stood up, walked to the bookshelf, and gently took down each old photo frame. The image of Daniel as a child, his eyes that used to sparkle lovingly looking at me, now only made my heart ache. I packed everything into an old box, then carefully put it deep in the closet, not to forget, but to put those painful things to rest so that I could continue living the rest of my life. Cleaning the house suddenly became a spiritual ritual, as if I were cleansing my own heart. I wiped each windowsill, rearranged each item, and felt lighter as each layer of dust disappeared. Each time I touched an old object, I was picking up the fragments of my soul, each once sharp, now worn. I knew the pain was still there, dull and silent, but no longer a bleeding wound, but a scar, silent and acceptable. I began to feel a change in myself. The obsessive thoughts of Daniel, of Laura, of that night at the party faded away. Instead, I began to seek out new things, simple joys, genuine connections. I remembered the flyer for the knitting group at the Maple Grove Community Center that I had overlooked. Knitting was a hobby I had always loved, but for years I had put it on hold because of unnamed responsibilities. Now I had the time, and I needed something for myself. The next day, I went to the community center. The atmosphere there surprised me, warm, friendly, and simple. I was greeted by a group of older women, all smiling, knitting endlessly with colorful yarn. There, I met Helen, a widow with smiling eyes and ashen hair. Her cheerfulness and empathy opened my heart. Helen had also experienced heartbreak, and we quickly found common ground. We sat for a long time, telling each other stories of our lives, of love, of loss, and of the small joys that sprouted after a storm. Helen talked about her volunteer work, her favorite books, and the roses she grew in her backyard. I told her about the scarves I'd knitted and the peace I felt watching each skein of yarn twist in my hands. We exchanged new patterns, new yarns, and small jokes, things that made us feel alive, needed. I found joy in those little things, even though somewhere deep inside, the pain was still silent like a dark shadow. Every stitch I knitted was a crack being mended. Every conversation with Helen was a wound healing. I began to accept the truth. Daniel was gone. My family was no longer the safe haven I had believed. But the world was much bigger, and there were still things worth loving. I was no longer trapped by unfulfilled expectations, no longer writhing to please people who did not care about my heart. I understood. Freedom does not come from struggling, but from letting go of unrealistic expectations, letting go of the sadness that has worn me down. I learned to love myself, to find happiness in a peaceful morning, a cup of fragrant tea, or a steady circle of yarn. The road ahead may be long and bumpy, but I will walk it with steady feet and a healed soul. The night rain poured down on Maple Grove as if to wash away all traces of memories, covering the town with a thick, gloomy blanket. The raindrops beat steadily on the old wooden roof, resounding with a damp, lingering sound, like the sound of a heavy, wordless heart. The yellow light in the living room flickered, casting a faint halo of light, dimly casting shadows on the walls stained with time, struggling to resist the cold of the rainy night. I sat silently by the window, my hand loosely holding an open book, but my eyes were hazy, drifting with nameless thoughts. There was something about this night that made my heart sink. Perhaps it was the rain, or perhaps it was the old memories that had just gently knocked on the door, awakening a sadness that had yet to be named. A sudden knock on the door, urgent, made my heart jump. Who could be coming at this hour in such a heavy rain? I got up from my chair and walked to the door with caution and anxiety. On the porch stood a trembling figure, her hair wet and matted, her clothes clinging to her skin from the rain. It was Emma, my niece, the child I had not seen since that fateful birthday night. "Grandma," she whispered, her voice choked and trembling, I, I have nowhere else to go." I immediately pulled her into the house and quickly wrapped a large towel around her shoulders. Emma sat down on the sofa, curled up in the towel like a wet little bird, her eyes red and swollen from crying. A sob broke from her chest, tearing the quiet space. "What happened, honey?" I whispered, a numb feeling of pain rising in my heart. Emma said she had run away. "They fought all the time, Grandma. They yelled and yelled and yelled. It was terrible. I couldn't take it anymore." Her voice was a whisper, broken between sobs. "They fought about money, about Dad's job. Dad, he's different these days." Emma's words were like a knife stabbing at my heart. Daniel was in crisis. His company was on the brink of bankruptcy. His projects were falling apart, and Laura seemed to have disappeared from his marriage. "Dad said it was all her fault," Emma whispered, her eyes filled with fear. "He believes she cursed him on his birthday." The words she said haunt him to this day. I was stunned. I thought those words were the truth that needed to be told, a way to protect myself. But for Daniel, they became an indelible mark, a curse that stifled trust. I never expected that. I just wanted my son to wake up. Emma continued, and what she said next took me by surprise. "I found a letter from you," she said, her voice breaking. "It was stuck in one of Dad's old books. She wrote about how much she loved him, how much she wanted him to be happy, how she would always be there for him, no matter what." Emma looked up, her eyes brimming with tears. "I read the letter and I regret it so much. I didn't stand up for you that night. I stayed silent while they hurt you. I'm sorry." She threw herself into my arms, sobbing. I held her tight, hot tears streaming silently down my cheeks and into her wet hair. For the first time, Emma showed me her true feelings, no holds or defenses. That rainy night, amid the howling wind and the rumbling roof, the two of us sat together. We talked for hours, sharing our losses, our silent pains, and the things that had never been said. I told Emma about the years of raising Daniel alone, the sacrifices I had made in silence. She told me about the loneliness, the pressure, the feeling of being abandoned in her own home. Once again, the conflict arose within me. I wanted to protect Emma from the maelstrom of chaos that was consuming Daniel's family, but I also didn't want to step back into that wounded land. I was so tired. Yet, seeing Emma trembling, fragile as a piece of wet paper, I knew I couldn't turn away. She was my own flesh and blood, the last spark that held me to the past. That unexpected encounter was like a door opening a new chapter in my life. I knew the journey ahead would not be easy, but this time I was not walking alone. Beside me was Emma, and within me, hope began to rise from the ashes of the past. Early the next morning, the pale yellow light of the kitchen fell like a streak of late sunlight left over from the old days, covering the small room in a layer of gentle tranquility. The smell of toasted bread wafted from the oven, mixed with the faint scent of herbal tea, making the space strangely cozy. The old wooden table, where I had sat alone through many lonely mornings, suddenly had Emma's soft laughter, as light as the wind touching my shoulder. The little girl had stayed after the rainy night, not saying much, just quietly present. But that presence was like a small candle, lighting up a soft light in a house that was too familiar with emptiness. We were having breakfast in gentle silence when the doorbell rang suddenly, interrupting the peaceful moment. I was startled. Who could be coming at such an early hour? Emma looked at me, her eyes worried as if she sensed something. I stood up and walked to the door. In front of me was Daniel. He stood there, battered as if he had just walked through a storm. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair was disheveled, and his eyes were sunken and darkened by sleepless nights. There was nothing left of the successful, confident man, only a broken, desperate son. My heart clenched. Even though I tried to distance myself from the pain he caused, the maternal love still smoldered, still burned within me. "Mom," Daniel said hoarsely, "Mom, I need your help." He walked into the house, slumping into a chair near the door as if all his strength had been drained. Emma emerged from the kitchen, her eyes filled with fear and longing as she looked at the father she had always longed to hug. But Daniel seemed oblivious to his daughter's presence. He began to tell, his voice shaking like a tight string about to snap. I I lost my job, Mom. They fired me. Everything fell apart." His hands clasped his head, his shoulders shaking. Laura. Laura left me too. She took Liam. She said I was a failure, not worthy of a family. I listened quietly, a whirlwind of confusion rising inside me. Part of me wanted to wrap my arms around him like when he was a child, to soothe his first fear. But another part of me still bled from the harsh words on that birthday night. "Mom," Daniel continued, looking up at me with red eyes, "I know. It's all because of you. It's because of your curse." I was stunned. "What curse? What are you talking about?" "What you said that night," he almost screamed. "That sentence, your arrogance will one day pay. That was a curse. You cursed me to lose everything. You ruined my life." I felt my heart squeeze. He still didn't understand, still couldn't see himself in the broken mirror. "Daniel," I said, trying to keep my voice calm as the storm inside raged, "I never cursed you. I just told you the truth. Pride always has a price. I warned you, but you didn't listen. I didn't hurt you. Your bad choices did." Daniel looked at me as if I were his enemy, the one who had pulled the strings of all his suffering. "No, it's not my fault. It's Mom's fault. You have to help me. You have to save me." He squeezed my hand, desperate. "Mom, do you have any money left? Lend me some money. I need it to pay off my debts, to start over. I slowly withdrew my hand, my eyes looking at him straight and determined. Daniel, I can't help you the way you want. I gave you my whole life. I sacrificed. I supported you to the point that I forgot myself. But now, you have to stand up for yourself. You have to learn to overcome your own darkness and not hide in the shell of blame forever. I knew I was rejecting my own child in his darkest hour. But if I didn't, I would be back where I left off, taking on the blame for things that weren't mine. It was time for my child to learn to take responsibility for himself, to grow up. I couldn't keep being the night watchman for his lost ways. My motherly love is torn between my instinct to hold my broken child and my reason that true love is sometimes not about saving, but about letting the other person learn to stand up from the wound. And I understand that sometimes the only way to love is to let the person you love face their own pain, like a man, not like a child who will never grow up. My backyard, where the afternoon sunlight poured gold onto the small violet beds, suddenly became Emma's own world, a peaceful space reserved only for her. The chirping of birds mixed with the clear laughter as Emma played with the tabby cat, like a simple nursery rhyme, dispelling all the hardships and sadness in me. After a long rainy night, she stayed, bringing with her a new rhythm of life, gentle yet intense, lighting up not only the house, but also my heart that seemed to have fallen asleep because of loneliness. Emma quickly settled into the simple life here, as if she had been waiting for a long time to find this rustic thing. I taught her to knit. The first stitches were clumsy and awkward, but her eyes lit up with rare joy. We baked bread together, the aroma of the crispy crust mixed with the sweetness of memories spreading through the warm kitchen. In the evening, Emma sat next to me, engrossed in listening to fairy tales or fragments of memories of Daniel's childhood. Her big round eyes lit up when I told her, as if each word was a piece of the puzzle she was searching for to understand the world around her. I clearly felt an invisible bond gradually tightening between us, a bond that did not need to be ostentatious, but was full of love and respect. Still, I knew Emma couldn't quite let go of her concern for Daniel. Every time the phone rang, she'd freeze, her eyes flashing with a fragile hope, then fall back when it wasn't her father on the other end of the line. I heard Daddy crying, Grandma, she whispered one afternoon, her voice trembling. I've never seen him like that, not even when Grandpa died. I'm worried about him. The words cut me like a knife. Though I'd always told myself to stay out of Daniel's life, the truth was that my son's pain, whether indirect or silent, still tugged at my heartstrings in a way I couldn't stop. One afternoon, as the last light of the day slanted across the wooden floor, Emma sat beside me, fiddling with the red yarn in her hand, as if in an unspoken thought. My mother used to call me a burden, Grandma. Her voice was as small as a breath, but it was enough to make me freeze. She said I was annoying, that I tired her, that I wasted her time. She always compared me to others, that I wasn't good enough, not smart enough. Those words, both strange and familiar, rang out like an echo of a past I had experienced. I heard in that voice not only Emma's wound, but also an echo of my own old wound, from Laura herself, the woman who had done the same to me. I held Emma close to me, burying my hands in her soft hair. No, Emma, you are not a burden. You are a gift, smart and kind and full of value. Don't ever let those cruel words make you doubt yourself. I began to become Emma's companion, her guide, not only in knitting or baking, but also in how to look at life and deal with vulnerability. I showed her that her self-worth does not come from the approval of others, but from within, where kindness, strength, and the desire to live authentically are. We read books together, talked about the meaning of choice, forgiveness, and how to keep the light even in the darkest days. I taught Emma that being strong does not mean not being allowed to hurt, but rather daring to face that pain, overcoming it with love for yourself. However, there was still a deep conflict within me. I wanted to protect Emma at all costs, to shield her from the darkness that Laura and Daniel had sown in her life. But I also understood that I could not always be the one to patch up the mistakes Daniel had made. I had to let her face it herself, to understand the consequences of her choices, because love also meant knowing how to let go when the time came. I could not do everything for him. My feelings for Emma grew day by day, not only as a real niece, but also as a young confidant, a light quietly shining into the long hidden corners of my heart. Being with her, I felt like I found myself again, more courageous, more alive, and even though I was getting old, I still learned that love is the only thing that can heal what seemed to have been rusted by time. Life will have many challenges, but I believe, together with Emma, we can overcome them all. The Maple Grove Community Center, where I frequented the knitting group, had become a deeply ingrained part of my new life. The soft light from the wide open windows filled the room, reflecting off the pastel yarns and bright faces, creating a warm scene like a still life painting. The murmur of conversation mixed with the clicking of needles, like heartbeats blended into a gentle, soothing melody. I sat there, my hands moving quickly over each stitch, my heart gradually calming, feeling a deep peace that I had long thought I had lost. I quietly reweaved my life, thread by thread, no longer bound by the heavy worries about Daniel. I began to participate in more activities, from reading to children at the library to literary discussions with people of the same generation. My friendship with Helen grew stronger. The afternoons we spent sipping chamomile tea together, quietly sharing stories about our children, about old age, and even the little things that still touched our hearts, became precious spiritual medicine. Helen was a gentle but strong-willed woman. Her empathy made me feel that I was no longer alone in my journey of rebirth. But no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, my mind would sometimes silently turn to Daniel. I still worried about him, still secretly hoping he would be okay, especially when what Emma told me showed the cracks that were happening inside him. But I promised myself I wouldn't interfere. He had to go through this trial by himself. It wasn't just the price of his mistakes, but also an opportunity for him to relearn how to be a decent and responsible person. I had come to the end of my journey as a devoted mother. Now it was time for Daniel to walk on his own 2 feet. That afternoon, as Helen knitted in the sunlight streaming through the window, she leaned over and whispered, "Margaret." She hesitated, her eyes weighing her words. "I heard that Daniel's company is in serious trouble. It seems that major projects are being canceled, clients are pulling out one by one, and I also heard that he is in danger of losing his home." A brief pang passed through my heart. I knew Daniel was in trouble, but I had no idea it was this bad. Part of me shook. I wondered if my words had really been ominous. Had I been too cruel? I looked at Helen, pursed my lips, and exhaled slowly. "Helen," I said, my voice soft but firm. "It breaks my heart, but I cannot be responsible for what Daniel is going through. It is the result of the choices he made. He has ignored everything I have taught him, everything I have told him. I have told him that pride will pay the price, and today it is happening. I understand more clearly than ever that this awakening does not come from coldness. It is the result of a long journey that I have quietly made, a journey from suffering to awakening. I cannot save Daniel forever. I am no longer a lifebuoy for his mistakes. The pain of a mother still burns, but it is no longer a burden on my shoulders. It has become a silence, helping me understand that I am worthy of peace. I bent down and continued knitting, each stitch as steady as the beat of my heart that had stopped beating. In that patience, I felt a new strength growing within me. I had stepped out of the darkness of the past, standing firmly on my own ground. Even though Daniel was no longer present in my life in the way I had expected, I still had Emma, Helen, the warm embrace of my friends and community, and I had myself, intact, complete in the serenity I had won for myself. I understood that the value of a person does not come from blind sacrifice, but from the courage to be true to oneself, gentle but not weak, tolerant but not self-destructive. In the warm kitchen, where the yellow light cast soft streaks of light on the walls, I sat next to Emma, my hands quickly untangling the unfinished skeins of yarn. The sound of boiling water resounded from the corner of the kitchen. The scent of chamomile tea spread throughout the space like a gentle whisper of the late afternoon. Emma's clear laughter intertwined with the stories we told each other. Small, insignificant stories, but full of connection. In that moment, nothing great happened. Nothing spectacular appeared. Just a very real, very close peace, which I had been searching for all my life. I stopped trying to change Daniel. He was the one who had to walk the path he had chosen, and the consequences today were none other than himself. I no longer lingered in torment or internal conflict over past mistakes. Instead, I moved forward, creating a new life not only for myself, but also for Emma, the little niece who had chosen to stay by my side and had unintentionally become a glimmer of light in the days that seemed to be fading. I knew Daniel was struggling, and although I still felt a lingering worry, I no longer felt the need to save him. He needed to stumble, to face failure, to learn how to stand up on his own 2 feet. He left, perhaps to start over, or simply to find the self that had been lost in the midst of ambition and recklessness. I didn't know if the day would come when he would return, but I knew it was a necessary journey for him to grow up. Meanwhile, Emma was there, a gentle presence like the morning sun, giving me hope for a new bond, built not on obligation or regret, but on understanding and genuine love. Together we knitted, planted flowers, cooked, and whispered endless stories. Emma told me about her naive dreams, her unfinished plans. As for me, I told her lessons that weren't in books, about family, about letting go, and about wounds that take time to heal. We didn't have the luxuries, but the simplicity brought a kind of genuine happiness, making me realize it's the little things that define life. Each stitch I knit not only forms the shape of a scarf, but also a testament to the strength and self-esteem that is being restored day by day. The violets in the garden are budding as a testament to the beginning of another life, a life of hope, of renewal. I no longer feel alone. I have Emma, Helen, and sincere friends at the community center. I have simple joys, the smell of fresh bread, the chirping of birds on the porch, and the pressure-free, non-judgmental conversations. Life, after all it has taken away, has also quietly given me a lesson. Loss is not the end. One can still find the meaning of life if one is willing to live true to oneself and cherish every little thing. Happiness does not lie in a distant place, but in the journey we take each day, a journey of healing, of growth, and above all, of gratitude. I have learned to let go of the ghosts of the past, open my heart to the present, and place my faith in the future. I am living a new chapter of my life, a chapter written with peace, with unpretentious happiness, and a very real meaning. And for the first time in many years, I no longer hope for anyone to come back. I only hope that I will always move forward with a peaceful heart and steadfast courage like today. Thank you for listening to my story.